profound insights on the thematic area titled Tech Stack for Privacy. Without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed panelists for today. Firstly, our session moderator, Mr. Rajesh Jain, serves as the Global Practice Head of Security Engineering at Wipro Technologies. Mr. Jain is a seasoned professional with over 2 decades of global experience in incubating and leading technology products and solutions. He spent a significant part of his corporate career at Cisco Systems, building data centers, switching, and security portfolio. He has also built a startup providing cybersecurity solutions and services to the small and medium enterprise segment. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Jain. Next, we have Ms. Joyce Rodrigues, a partner at Deloitte's Cyber Risk Advisory Services. With a career spanning of over 20 years, Ms. Rodrigues is a seasoned technology leader who has traversed various IT domains from cybersecurity to privacy and data protection. Her wealth of experience in IT infrastructure operations and application management will significantly contribute to our discourse. Let's extend a warm welcome to Ms. Joyce Rodrigues. We are also privileged to have with us Professor Pandurangan, a distinguished academic with an illustrious career at IIT Madras and currently holding the Kotak Mahindra Visiting Chair Professorship at IISc. His expertise in algorithms and cryptography, marked by a chairmanship at IIT Madras and recognition as a distinguished chair professor, brings a profound academic perspective to our discourse. We are honored to have you with us today, Professor. I now welcome to the panel Mr. Ramakant Mohapatra, the Director of Data Privacy and Protection at Edgework, an Infosys product company. Mr. Ramakant is driving implementations of privacy by design and PETs in various product platforms, focusing on generative AI and analytics. His fellowship in IAPP, in addition to his leadership in DSCI's special interest groups, showcases his commitment to advancing data privacy practices. He was a finalist for Data Privacy Leader of the Year in 2022, including 2023. Currently, he is pursuing his PhD in data privacy. Thank you for being here today. Lastly, I have the privilege of introducing to all of you Mr. Vaibhav Mehrotra. Mr. Mehrotra, in his early career, he built cloud security products at Zscaler and Qualys in Silicon Valley, California. He was a CISO and privacy officer before starting security, where he faced challenges of effectively discovering data in unstructured data. Thank you so much for being here today, Mr. Mehrotra. Our panelists bring a wealth of diverse perspectives and expertise, promising an insightful discussion. So without further delay, I now hand it over to Mr. Jain to lead the discussion. But again, I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. We're just waiting for a few chairs to be put up. So we'll be starting the session in a few minutes. Thank you.
We'll try to keep you awake. I want to cover the topic itself as to what we intend to do in the next 45 minutes. The technology stack for privacy, a topic which is very close to my heart. What we will try to do is to demystify some of the technology landscape which is out there, some of the use cases, the real world problems it can solve. We will also touch upon some details around the process itself and some of the coverage. And before we get started and dive deeper into the questions, I would invite each of the panelists to kind of share their initial thoughts around the topic itself. And then we begin with the question with the panel discussion. Thank you.
Since I'm starting, maybe let me share a perspective of what I believe. So we're talking about a tech stack for an enterprise, a tech stack for privacy for enterprises. So when we talk about a tech stack, typically, and for any particular organization, what I believe is the first thing to, for any, whether you're a privacy officer, a technologist, a chief architect, or anybody, one of the most important things when looking at a technology stack for your organization is to first understand your organization, your business itself. What is your business about? What business processes you have, what business transactions you do. And in doing that, what kind of data do you collect? What kind of data processing activities you do? It is important to understand, and I emphasize on this because a lot of us as technologists, we just go straight into a technology, the nuances and the fancy things about the technology, and tend to not understand how to make it relevant for the business. So from that standpoint, understanding, just give it 1 second. To understand the businesses, your business process, business transactions, knowing what data you collect, knowing how that data is processed, what processing activities happens, etc. Then the other important thing to understand is how that data about your business, whether you're in the business of financial services, in the healthcare, in pharma sectors, or in retail sectors, consumer sectors, automotive sectors, how can that data be misused? All the potential abuse cases for that particular data. It's important to understand in what way that data of your organization can be used, and then think about how you protect that. Because you need to understand the objective of why you're protecting that data first, before you get into understanding which technology can protect it. Because then you can make the choice of data of the technologies more easily, actually. Because we've spoken about quite a few technologies and tools, and you'll hear a little more about the different techniques and tools and technologies that can be used to protect your data across the life cycle. But before you even understand the life cycle, understand the use of it across the life cycle, and then be able to look at it. So that's one very important aspect. And then yes, the tech stack needs to take into account a set of frameworks, and sometimes a lot of these frameworks are also underpinned by regulations as well. Like we have our own Digital Personal Data Protection Act now, DPDP, whether it was GDPR in the past or any other privacy act. There are some underlying guidelines that also determine the kind of framework that you need to establish within your organization, and how do you protect the data accordingly as well. And then make a choice of technologies. And sometimes it's a choice of a technology or a tool, but also sometimes it's about using the right kind of, we read a lot about, there are many terminologies up there on the screen, but when do you use all of this? When do you use anonymization? When do you use the right kind of encryption? And because you have very advanced forms these days. It is, before you understand all of that, the first part is to just understand the business use of your data itself, all the potential abuse cases for it, and then go into understanding the technology. So today, in today's discussion, we hope to bring about some of those use cases. We'll try and touch upon how these use cases apply across different types of industry sectors, etc. And then help you in making those choices of building your tech stack for privacy in your organization.
Okay. So here comes an academician. Wherever there is a confusion and crisis, academicians will immediately pitch in and then see what are the formalisms that could help the situation, bring clarity, and so on. As you know, that privacy is not even well understood, and the implication or the impact of that is not at all understood. You just walk into a supermarket, he asks you a mobile number, and then you give it just like that. And you do not know how seriously that has been abused, misused, and so on, and what are the potential losses we may have due to that. Public is not sensitized, and in fact, only very recently we have Privacy Act and other things are getting into the mood. So it is important that we have to sensitize, and also we need appropriate brain behind, or for the machines to work, the algorithms or the ideas that would fill this tech stack with the core themes. So that obviously requires formalization of privacy. We need a model for privacy, goals for privacy. We need threat models. Once we have them, then we can say that, hey, here is one tool. This can provide this kind of privacy. It can handle this kind of a threat, and so on. There's nothing like that one solution fits all kind of a situation. So a lot of research work has been happening from various points of view, and we will have an occasion to briefly touch upon variety of those things. Just to give you a sample of this, for example, this is called multi-party computation. Suppose two guys want to know who is richer, but they don't want to reveal their asset value, right? So A and B have their assets, they want to decide. Only thing to be known at the end is who is richer than who. That's all should be known. A should not know B's worth and B should not know A's asset value. So how is it possible without even letting to know? Beautiful question, isn't it? And this is the kind of a privacy that we require. Consider the use case where you want to know whether women wages are decidedly lower than the men's wage. This question was taken up in Boston from the Women Welfare Society, and Boston University made a thorough analysis of the problem and then gave an excellent solution. Nobody revealed their salary figures, but then the conclusions are obtained. In other words, the privacy of the data and privacy of various information is maintained, but the problem was solved. So like this, we have several interesting ideas and solutions that have emerged. We will have an occasion to interact with you in our second round. So it's always good to give a break when something exciting is there in you. More later, much like the sensational movie break.
That was a good trailer, Professor. Let's move on to Mr. Ramakant.
Hi guys. Hello. Okay, so I want to start a little differently. So we need this extra privacy. So that is the basic and why it is required. So I'll start from the analogy of because of the more and more knowledgeable users or the enterprises that need to be regulated because of the flow of enormous personal data across the internet. So because of that, if we see, there are many regulations that have been enacted in multiple countries, and there is something that has to be accountable for and responsible for. So looking at that, if I take the privacy regulation at the top, then privacy regulations actually is the custodian of all the privacy principles that we talk about, start from data collection, storage, data subject rights, consent and all that. So then how those privacy principles have to be taken care in our kind of life cycle of the data processing in the environment, either it is government or private or elsewhere, right? So the privacy principles are being designed through the privacy by design, so that is an approach which will talk about what are the different kind of data that needs to be done at each life cycle stages. Then moving to that, whether we have to protect all kind of data or all the kind of restrictions or the technology has to be implemented in the similar fashion for all kind of data? No, because that depends upon the risk assessment that we do in order to sensitize the data and try to put the appropriate control. Then how those controls has to be implemented? It is nothing but through the tech stack. Because the tech stack are the nothing but the privacy enhancing technologies which will be taking care of the different protection measures at each stage of the life cycle. That's very, very important. I just mentioned earlier, at each stage we have to have different treatments of the technology. We cannot put, suppose, differential privacy across all the life cycles, which doesn't fit at all the time. So that is one aspect we should understand. So hence, tech stack is required in order to have the automated version of the tracking, automated version ensuring that data is protected, and we should be able to demonstrate that the later stage of time when it is demanded by the regulators or the authorities. That is number one. Now, we have to understand one aspect is that the privacy regulation is going on in different countries, and technological transformation is happening in the rapid space. So if you look at GDPR took so much time to get enacted, maybe 10 years of the research. And similarly, in India, we also took so much time to enact our Data Privacy Act. But then how did we do the processing elsewhere, right? We were serving the customers, we are doing the processing, we are running the business. So the logic is technological transformation is always will be ahead of the privacy regulations. That is number one. But however, privacy regulation doesn't specify any particular technology to be implemented. So they tell, based on your risk assessment, you have to design and deploy the appropriate technological controls. So that's why the technological phenomenon has taken such a leap that someone is doing the anonymization at some stage, someone is using the multi-party computing some stage, someone is using blockchain, zero knowledge proofs. So different technologies are available to be applied and implemented for the different solutions. Just like for one medicine is not there for all kind of diseases, similarly we should understand that all the technologies are not same to be used for data protection at all life stages. That's my sense.
I'll take a more simpler approach. Like I think people have explained different at a brief level the technology side of things. What is the fundamental problem? What we just discussed the last 7-8 minutes. The fundamental problem is the data, and where it all starts. The challenge is now with this DPDP Act and all these global privacy laws, it brings the regulation of data. And what it starts with understanding where your data is. So the biggest challenge is, if you look at it, like we have in security domain, like you have different tools which can help you in discovering the data. But these are all legacy technologies in terms of like understanding that data. Because what these privacy laws are bringing today is understand the data and creating a context and then correlate it. Now it's all about individual data. It's not about like, okay, I found the data, secure the data, and all that stuff. It's all about consumers like all of us, right? Now, these laws are giving power to the consumers at the end of the day. Now you can go to Flipkart or any of these companies like your banks and you say like to one bank that, okay, like, I don't want to operate with you and I want to close down and I want to go to the bank. But they have all of your data. So you can actually go and ask, you have the fundamental rights to say that, hey, give my data back or delete my data. So now the challenges come is, how do you discover that data? So all these financial institutions, healthcare, any of these institutions who are storing data, the biggest challenge is how do they find the data of that individual and then take further steps around it, right? What we just discussed about technologies that they need to implement to secure it, find, secure, and then the destruction of it. So I think we'll be talking some of those things in the session.
So I think that's a good overview of what we want to cover here. We talked about the importance of privacy and the challenges associated. The first question I want to start with you is, you have talked about the recent challenges, look at the privacy preserving technologies. Like there are multiple technologies which come to mind. So what are your views on how this technology space for privacy is evolving and some of the key developments in this area?
I'll just extend to what I was just mentioning. So if you look at it like where it's going in future, it's not about like, we have been building a security stack, security like by design and all of that stuff. But now with these privacy laws coming in, so we have to rethink our approach as we go in future. 3 to 5 years from now, how you look in your organizations with this DPDP Act in place, and your operation is a global organization, like where you have to implement multiple privacy laws. It becomes very complex around that. So what do you do, like, so you build a privacy stack, like, we talk about like a security stack, but when we talk about a privacy stack, you need to build like privacy by design. And when we talk about privacy by design is, like you have like few steps in that, like, understanding, finding the data, then how your data is being processed, it's being used, and then it's been anonymized, and then it's been destructed. So it's a typical data life cycle. Now when you're doing all of this, how you build your stack. Now to start with, like, understanding the data, when I talk about, say you have data like on Aadhaar card, like you are storing Aadhaar card information. Now once you have that information, how do you process that data? Well, once you process, then you are anonymizing the data, right? Or you are saying, okay, I want to maybe pseudo-anonymize, depending on your business need. And then you take further steps. So that's, you need to build a privacy stack around it, and then you go further, and you need to also understand your security stack, how privacy and security needs to inculcate. So how the future of this will evolve is what we see is like is privacy-driven security. So privacy has been till now like a compliance checkbox. If you look at it like the last 20, 25 years. But now with these privacy laws, what we'll see is it will be a privacy-driven security which says that privacy law says these things and you have to do these certain things and then you build your security stack. So I think these are the few of the things like on the privacy stack, and maybe we'll talk about more like how confidential computing and all of that stuff that can help in enhancing security stuff.
Thank you. So the way I look at this is, there are three key elements we should be looking at when we talk about privacy, right? One is your data minimization, where you actually look at, I need to collect only the adequate amount of data, nothing more, nothing less. Then how do I put security controls around the data to ensure I'm adhering to all the requirements which are out there from regulations point of view, resolution point of view. And empowering the user, that is the third element which you look at. If I am providing my personal information to any of the websites or any of the online portals out there, I should have a process to view what data they're collecting, how they're going to store it, process it, and if I really need that to be taken away or deleted, I should be able to do that, right? Now, within this, the technology stack of how do we ensure this information which I'm providing the consent for, and it is being stored by these providers, how are they preserving the privacy and the confidentiality of the data, right? And all these confidential computing and trusted encryption environment, homomorphic encryption, data masking, all these are different elements which you can actually use during this life cycle of data to preserve some of that, right? So we'll come to that in a bit later in terms of what these different technologies are and some of the use cases around that. What I would like to ask next is from Mr. Ramakant, who is been involved in really implementing some of these technologies. What are some of the real world use cases you see, and if you can be specific about some of the industry sectors, for example, if you can pick up one or two, and kind of walk us through how you implement it and how it helps with the privacy elements.
Yeah, thanks. It is a good question. So I hope all of us cannot forget the COVID-19 era, right? COVID-19. So I want to talk about the surveillance aspect, that's one, and the one more banking. So let's understand in the surveillance aspect. At that time, I think the whole world was just trembling and they need to ensure that they want to contain this. So the design was that test, track and trace, right? Test, treat and track, all those fundamentals, right? So for that you need a surveillance system, okay, and applications, which also needs to collect a lot of user data and also need to give those data to the different kind of sectors to provide, right? It will start from the police, from the health sectors, hospitals, and government bodies and NOCs, and at village level, every level, right? So you can understand that because of that time, so much of data will be collected in different parts of the world. And hence, and they have to be stored in some of the servers. And you do not know the server is in India or elsewhere. And secondly, there will be a lot of access that will be there by different varieties of bodies because they need to understand, they need to provide services, they want to quarantine the areas that needs to be done, and then they have to individually also trace and track and treat, right? So based on all these business cases, so the applications that was running around the world for surveillance, so they need to understand that the volume of data that is the health data, along with the disease, whether I am COVID or not COVID, those kind of and also there will be death. So there is a lot of sensitive data, right? So in order to that, so there is a concept called differential privacy that was deployed in these kind of databases, so that the differential privacy will not give the individual data to the supplier. Suppose a courier company has to deliver some of the medicines in a particular hospital, or a police has to do some kind of quarantine in a particular apartment complex. So what happened in that? So they started quarantining the data through the differential privacy aspect, So only those kind of data that will be provided to the different stakeholders for their work. And number two, their data is not going as is the whole data set. That means for COVID-19, maybe more than 80 data elements are collected, if you don't know, 80 plus. So that means only police will know few data elements. Similarly, the other guys will only know their data elements to provide. So that is one of the cases. The second part is, if you remember, some of us also implemented applications in our mobile in order to always do a test and give that, right? So there was a lot of questions that all the data is going to the database, getting stored. But if you look at the data minimization aspect, it is kind of self-declaration, which is a consent, which is a privacy need. Then post that, if you look at that, only when you are telling that you suspect that you are of COVID-19, only the suspect cases goes, not on those cases which is really not required. So those kind of differences started building in over a period of time. So the data that you see in the health data, that is completely safe, and also a lot of encryption happened. They did an POC, a pilot was done in parallel by different companies. So that is one aspect. Finally, suppose you are not, COVID era is done. So what will happen to the data that Rajesh mentioned about data deletion, right? So post that, because so much data was collected and this is kind of pandemic across the world. So they wanted to do a lot of research in the different varieties, right? A lot of research. So because of that, some of the guys, those who are not identified as false positives, that means they are not real COVID-19, but it became, that is a set of data. The another set of data that was there, they are treated but again resurfaced. So they did a lot of research on that. So for that, they did the anomalization of the data and they kept it separately in another server. For those analytics engine of different companies, they have to access and they have to provide in the health sector. So this is what just wanted to tell, that there are different technologies has to be used for different purposes, not that all will be implemented at scale. So that is one. Coming back to the next one about the banking sector. So I hope all of us know about blockchain. The blockchain technology we know, and in India more than 15 banks have enrolled in doing the pilots. They are also using in different cases. So if you remember, blockchain is a type of technology which has combined all the banks to do something that to avoid the money laundering aspect, so that they can do fraud detection and fraud prevalent activities to be minimized, and also ensuring that there is a smart contracts that will go between different parties. So here what has happened, post implementation of this, with a focus that we will have cryptocurrency, which will be using the blockchain technology more safer, but the problem was that there need to be next level of security. So now the researchers are doing that zero knowledge proofs, so that approver and reviewer are also getting intact. So the accountability aspect from both parties is getting done, and it trying to get a zero trust environment. So similarly, KYC, what we do in banks right now. If you remember, every 2 years we get a message, please come and submit your documents. So that is going to be more and more automated, and it is going to use different technologies in order to do not only blockchain but other technologies, so that it makes more easier for the people with the trust. So the robust trust mechanism that we understand that zero trust everywhere, so that is coming through even simple uses of identification of the identity of the customer, that is KYC, what is required. So now a lot of research is happening to curtail the anti-money laundering activities. If you look at different agencies like ED, CBI and the FBI, they are doing a lot of research how to ensure that the digital trade is traced. And they are working on different kind of technologies like maybe zero knowledge proofs, and the different kind of submission that is happening, who is approving, so reviewer and approver funders, and also blockchain technology to understand the node which is coming from which country. So all that they started doing, so that you aid them in the proper investigation and identifying the conflict. So these are the two cases which just I wanted to share, so that you can understand that more and more is happening, but now also it is being implemented in different ways.
So I think let's move to a little bit of academia and research in terms of what is happening in this domain, more from the futuristic, technology standpoint. So, Professor, if you could cover, academia and industry really work together closely in this, and what are some of the research work or future-looking technologies which are, underway, being developed? If you can throw some lights on that.
Sure. So thank you. You know that the data is collected with your approval or without your approval. There are surveillance camera, they capture your picture, images, and then there are so many information technologies. If you take smart cities, for example, it completely keeps track of your movement and other things. And there are so many ways in which your personal and private data are collected. The problem arises when they are researched and analyzed. Okay, that is exactly when the threat for your privacy comes up. Therefore, the fundamental question is, there's a lot of data or information is available. How do we get certain processing done without affecting privacy? That's why it's called privacy enhancing technology, where even without your control, sometimes with your control, sometimes without your control, there's a lot of data that is all around, and they are extensively researched, studied, computed for business advantages, for decision making, for a variety of reasons they are analyzed. So, the context, as was mentioned already by the panelists, are different. For instance, if you look into the context where you want to delete the account of the bank and other things, how do we do that? It was one question. But if you look into the blockchain, immutable history, and everything is in the plane, and one can look into the entire blockchain and find out what are all the transactions that you have done, which means it is as if you put your passbook or something like that open in the bazaar or street. Anyone can browse through and find out to whom you have given money, how much money, when, and so on. So the whole question is that the kind of technology you need is different from the context. So I'll tell you very briefly about what is a zero knowledge protocol. It's a two-party protocol. It's an interactive protocol between two parties. Okay, they interact. One would like to convince the other party he knows some fact, or there is some fact to be established, without revealing what that fact is. For instance, here is a real life situation. Right? You are interacting with a credit evaluating or credit estimating agency. But you want to know your credit worthiness, but you don't want to reveal all the detail about your salary and other expenses you are doing, other commitments. Still, you would like to get a credit rating. How do we get this done? It's a very interesting question. Right? So, of course, you can give a full disclosure process. You give all the details and he gives you, you are 843 on 1000 scale or something like that. That's a different matter. However, if you want the privacy to be maintained, how do we achieve it? For example, ING Bank, the Dutch bank, has come up with an interesting suite of protocols which will do the credit worthiness or credit assessment using the zero knowledge protocol. So a user can interact with the bank and then get the assessment done, but without revealing anything about his financial status or resources. Okay. And there are many things like that we can do, like coordinate masking, etc. Because you do not want to know from where certain questions are raised and so on. This is very essential when you are dealing with the surveillance data and so on, which is pinpointing your presence in a particular coordinate. So in this way, you can see that there are several situations. They are very diverse in nature, and we need different technologies for it. To extend the notion of the blockchain that was discussed already, for instance, in blockchain, in a transaction, suppose you give $10, you must have in your account $15 at least, or $10 at least. So the first thing that is sanity check is done whether you own the money and then whether you have that much amount of money and so on. Can this be done without revealing the actual numbers? What kind of computation or what kind of methodologies can be used? You have options. Homomorphic encryption is doing the manipulation of numbers, encrypted numbers, without revealing what the actual numbers are. It's very complex. Still, standards are to be evolved, and the mathematical methodology that is so complex that it is considered as impractical. In fact, down south, There is a joke that even Rajinikanth cannot solve this. Okay? So it has become a part of Rajinikanth joke. It is so complex and then pretty wide. Zero knowledge protocol, on the other hand, is getting more and more practical. You can look at ZKP, zero knowledge protocol.org. They are evolving standards. There are teams that are looking into the process and the development and other things, and it is nearing the maturity. There are several technologies that are not really mature, and some of them are really getting much closer to the maturity levels. It's something that is happening. It is futuristic. In fact, for multi-party computation, we really do not have even any standards. That's the kind of a thing. And then we also have to look at the context. Usually, if you think of an encryption or decryption, digital signature or other thing, you can imagine that a single computer or one dabba is doing the computation for you. Look into the blockchain or something like that, completely decentralized. The context in which all these applications are to be worked out is to be done in a totally distributed way. It's a completely different paradigm. The future is looking forward to get all these things done, not as a single algorithm in one box, but in a distributed fashion. The complexity is enormous in that. Imagine 100 people who do not know each other and who do not know even to whom they are talking to is trying to solve a problem. That too, security problem or privacy problem. It's really deep and advanced, and that is another direction in which the future is going here. To sum up, we need the standards to be evolved. Zero knowledge protocols have come up with certain good standard mechanism, and it is nearing maturity. There are other things. NIST is taking efforts on homomorphic encryption. For multi-party computation, various efforts are taking place in bits and pieces, but still it has to mature. But all of them have got use cases. There are real-life situations where they are applied and demonstrated its worth. It's only the future that would determine its practical deployment in much wider and broader context. Scalability is another key issue on which the research is happening in all these fronts. So with this brief remark, I would pass on back to you. If there are any questions later on, I will take.
Thank you very much. Yeah, please go ahead.
So what Professor was just saying, like, just to flip it on that, look at it like, we all use Facebook, Google, right? Everybody has iPhone or Samsung phone. We are sitting here right now, all these technologies, these companies, they are listening to you, right? Whether we know it or we don't know it, right? Now, what will happen is, on the lighter side, what Professor said just now, he might get advertisements on his phone related to what he just talked about. And he will say, oh, why they are telling me all of this? I know all of this, right? So this is all about your privacy. Like, we are in a state where it's completely messed up. Like, we are being tracked at every moment, whether we like it or not.
Recommendations on the. All right, so let's bring in another element which we all have been kind of talking about for past 3-4 quarters. AI has taken world by storm, and everybody's talking about AI, generative AI, different variants of it. What I would like to pose this question to Joyce and to really get her views on what are some of the unique data privacy challenges which AI is throwing up, and your recommendations on how we can address them.
Rajesh, in fact, what Daniel said is probably one of the biggest privacy concerns, right? So, and yes, AI has been the buzzword for about for quite some time, but in the last 1 year, it's picked up so much that I'm pretty sure everybody in this room understands fundamentally how artificial intelligence works. They work on large volumes of data, like significantly large volumes of data, actually, very algorithmic. They need to be, they are basically more self-create data models and everything. So what this means is, the underlying aspect of AI is data actually. And one of the most important things is, today we talk about privacy, right? One of the foremost things we say is, we talk about is consent. So when data is being collected at the first point of collection itself, there is a consent that needs to be sought. Now, all of us have accessed websites where there is a consent form and everything. We barely read that. But then, even if, from organizations, you may also have design sessions. So you just say that you collect so and so data, you will use it for various analytics purposes, etc. But what is that analytics? That example of Facebook that I just mentioned. So today, you may be browsing something on LinkedIn. Tomorrow you open something on LinkedIn, Facebook. You're seeing ads there. Ads of something that you browse. I'm sure all of us have been through this actually. This is now a norm. To the extent that, about the devices receivers and everything. And some of my non-tech friends have also said that, I feel it's a sign from the universe, I need to buy this house, but no, it is that you've been talking about it, thinking about it, browsing about it, and that's why you're getting recommendations, reels and everything, right? So imagine your whole life today. I mean, we all can see our life today is controlled, by AI actually. Our lifestyle, our choices, our purchases are not our own to a large extent. They are influenced. So that is one of the biggest privacy risks. So, can you go back? We should actually go back to the point of saying the personality we are building today, is that our own? No, actually, it is influenced by so many of the other, choices and influences that are coming via these artificial intelligence technologies actually. So one of the biggest privacy concerns and risks is that your whole lifestyle today is controlled by by the big tech companies, the data that is being collected and processed about it. So the consent, that part of it. Then Professor also spoke about surveillance. Ramakanth spoke about surveillance during COVID-19. Then today, artificial intelligence is also being used a lot by law enforcement agencies. So, in the name of surveillance, monitoring, and public health and safety, welfare, etc., how much data is being collected today and analyzed for various reasons, and all that thing. There is use of AI behind all of that actually. Where do we draw the line between the good and the bad of being surveillanced that way, being monitored that way? That's the grey area that we're dealing with today. Then, there are several actually privacy concerns. I'll just talk about a handful of them. In terms of, we've seen the impact of deepfakes, fake news. That is influencing our choices of who we are voting to come into power. They're influencing, how we respond and react in communities today. So, think about it, the downside, the upside is very good, brilliant actually. I just love when AI makes my life very easy. I'm sure all those who have used ChatGPT to get some quick answers have found it to be a blessing today. So yes, AI has made life quite easy and convenient in many ways actually. I do like some of the recommendations that pop up by itself. But then what we're dealing with the hindsight is about how much of our life is also getting influenced by it. How are our reactions, our responses, our choices, our biases getting influenced by it? And that's where I feel those are the risks. How can they be managed? I think it's a huge aspect for us to think about. We're trying to do it with it. Because this is about moral compass, this is about the ethics of using technology and data as such. How much can you control ethics? You get, like for example, when in terms of building our moral values, right? It starts with home, the way we're brought up actually, it starts in school, all of you have had moral science classes and everything. But still we have crime in the world, right? So, and then to counter that crime, we have, obviously law and law enforcement, etc., which is what is happening in technology as well. That's why we have regulations. We've seen, many countries, geographies actually coming up with AI regulations actually. Europe has a draft bill. US and several states are talking about regulating AI, especially for the big tech companies. So you're seeing this. But how much can you control the use of AI? The right use of AI, or the ethically right use of AI, will become one of the biggest questions and challenges for us, and it will invade into our privacy eventually.
I think one thing I see, and I think on that, is one of the, all these things have been happening in the past as well, right? The data tracking and all these automated recommendations. It has just got kind of expedited or speeded up a lot in the last 6 months, 12 months time. the real danger which I see from the use of heavy use of AI is of impersonation, and the ability to impersonate somebody in terms of their talked about, right, or the voice impersonation, or your ability to send an email which is very close to what look like coming from a genuine source. Earlier you would look for phishing mails by spelling mistakes. You don't do that anymore, right? That used to be once, way of catching. Hey, maybe there will be spelling mistakes. The email was not too well crafted. But now you have the ability to kind of make it really coming from a genuine source, and so the ability to do that through AI is very different, unique concern you have from privacy standpoint.
What Joyce said, like there have been instances in the US, like for example, a person is just walking on the street and the cops come and they catch that guy because they thought using the AI technology that this person is someone else. It's profiling on that, right? And they catch him, they take him, and like after a certain point of time, they say, oh, you got the wrong person. It's called by AI wrong profiling. Yes. Yes, and in addition to that, like we talk about AI bias, like when we go and buy tickets, like airline tickets, right? So like you see a certain price at this point of time, and maybe after an hour you see a different price altogether, right? Why the price changed in 1 hour, or maybe in a few minutes, like. So it's all driven by AI, like how depending on the traffic, like how many people are coming on the website, how many people are looking for the same ticket for the same airlines, so it changes. It should not happen like the price should be constant.
So in the interest of time, we are very close to our time. We have only a few minutes left. I would like to keep this time for Q&A. So if any of you have any specific questions, please go ahead and ask.
Question per se, and referring to Joy's point, very interesting one, choice and consent. Specifically with regards to data privacy regulations as of date. The data, the way it has been collected, it is consent should have a choice. It will become a consent if it has a choice. Otherwise, it's implied. Right? So most of the data that they collected is actually implied data. And then the second point of the airport security that you talked about, I think national security would supersede everything else when it comes to data collection. So I think that implies implied consent is a bigger problem as on day rather than anything else. So because that is where the choice is. The moment you give a choice, and then you can, if you say no to a particular answer, even then you're getting it resolved and you're getting what you're looking for. Then it is actual consent. Otherwise, it's implied consent. That's what I want. Thanks.
So I think this where this opt out and opt in really comes in. Instead of assuming your consent, by default it is no. And if you really want to subscribe or agree to something, you explicitly say yes to that.
So like it's very divided. When you talk about it in GDPR sense, it's like opt-in. Right? But if you talk about some other privacy laws, it's opt-out. Like by default, they take your consent and they assume that you agree with them. Right? So it's very challenging. And when you talk about in terms of organizations, so if you are globally operated, it becomes very challenging. Opt-in or opt-out.
Thank you.
My question is looking at the topic. What technologies we are also so So what do we do? We don't pay 50 crores under the fine. What technology should we get? We're relying on our environment. So that's something I want.
Yes. Who wants to take that? I can take the first stab and then. So I think this is the real question we all are trying to address, right? How do we ensure we put the right technology controls in place, not just to comply with checkbox, activity, but also ensuring that we are taking the right measures to preserve privacy, right? And I think nothing is foolproof. You only can try looking at what is available out there in terms of technology options. And I know it's very noisy, it's very crowded. I think what we really need is simplification of what is available out there. There are hundreds of companies giving solutions which are mildly different from each other, and that creates a lot of noise in the system. But if you really look at how you address the entire problem, it's very, very specific to the organization. I know you're trying to secure, and also looking at your technology stack, what you already have, it has to kind of merge with what you're trying to achieve. So those are the few considerations you need to keep in mind. And
so let me very quickly answer some of the issues that are actively researched in academics. Much like the deepfake is the flip side of the AI-based program. Deep learning is excellent, but deepfake is dangerous. And this is happening all over. For example, K-anonymity or anonymity, de-anonymization and other things. One of the standard ways in which you protect the identity. For instance, you may cut off some digits of your zip code and then people with this zip lost 2 digits. That would put a lot of people look very symmetric and then you can't distinguish. That's how you build those kind of anonymity solutions. Differential privacy introduces randomness. So the flip side of this is, something very interesting has happened in South Africa. For their welfare measure, for the underprivileged, when they want to give, they don't want to distinguish the underprivileged from the privileged one, because that creates a social problem. But the anonymity tool they introduced has made a lot of the privileged people to fake and then get into the privileged one. Last year, the estimated loss was $186 million US. Just the anonymity tool. Like what our panelists have said, it has ticked all the boxes of providing the anonymity, but it didn't prevent the cheating that is provided by the anonymity tool. And the same way, now the AI research community is working to fight against the deepfake and so on. Every tool and technology is trying to find out, while this is ticking all the boxes, does it give sufficient protection? That's another thing that we have to look into when we deploy. Because after a lot of effort and deployment, if we find that there is a natural weakness in it, redoing and re-engineering is going to be an excessively difficult task. So we must make sure that we keep our eyes on that other side of the aspect also while looking into these solutions.
thank you, Professor. We are completely out of time, so
But I will go back to my first point I mentioned in my introduction. It's important for us to understand what data is being connected and how it's being used in the processing across the life cycle. So you touched a little bit about the initial phases, data collection, etc. It's more about having the right consent management platforms, the right data discovery and classification capabilities, etc. So that is an essential part of the tech stack. But then when your data is collected and is being used in your various business activities, then there are various use cases for when do you use anonymization, when do you use masking, is your and today a lot of the modern technologies like cloud platforms, etc., they come with some of these native capabilities. Are the native capabilities good enough? Or do you need additional technologies there? Is that level of encryption enough for the kind of use the data is? Look at your entire enterprise on security as well. You have the right controls at a perimeter level, at an endpoint level, to prevent data leakages or to prevent data breaches itself. And look at how they're transferring data actually third parties, etc. Then you also be able to evaluate the right communication, secure communication protocols, I would say. So it's not a single bullet to say this should be your technology stack. It has to be looked at from a perspective of what is your enterprise, enterprise architecture, what is your tech stack in your organization, what are your business processes about, what are your business rules of the data, and then look at the various other capabilities before you get back to saying this is the best tech stack for my organization. So that is what I would say in my next statement.
thank you very much. We are completely out of time. Thanks for being here, listening to us, and I thank all the panelists for their time. Thank you very much.
On behalf of Team DSCI, we would like to extend a small token of our appreciation. So, if I could invite Mr. Suresh Ram V to the stage. He's the head of security and privacy at Narayana Health, and he would be felicitating the panelists.